the interface. So I've also heard people, sorry, let me just finish, because I also heard people use, one story I saw the person use AutoMappers and all that. So I just want to understand the whole concept. When do you use one and when should you not use the other?
Okay. First things first, repository pattern is just like it's an architectural pattern when building or when writing code. There are a couple of them, and we're going to look into some of them on this program. Right, we're going to look into onion architecture. We're also going to try look into plain architecture, repository pattern, which we already have looked into. We'll talk about it. Then AutoMapper, right, is a library used for mapping objects, right, classes in your code. So I'll talk about AutoMapper first before moving into repository pattern. So AutoMapper, like I said, it's an object. It's a library that's used to map objects. Let me see if I can go to the website. Right. So most times, oh shoot, I stopped sharing. So most times when you're working or when you're writing code, you do not want to show your database entity to the users. You don't want to expose your database entity to the users. So there's something called DTOs, data transfer objects. You want to also look into it. DTOs, right? Data transfer objects. So what that means is you're transferring data from one object to the other. Let me open an image here. You're transferring data from one object to the other. So your database entity has like this one. This isn't the one I opened. Sorry. The database entity has like, okay, ID, name, whatever. I think this is the one I was trying to open. Yeah, so as ID, name, whatever property that you want to pass into it, right? But then when creating probably a book or a to-do item or a food class or whatever you're trying to create, the user does not need to provide ID, right? So then you could create a DTO with just the amount of information that you need from the user. Now, look at this now. This is probably our database entity on the database. We have a book table, we have an author table, right? Now, we want to create, once someone wants to create both an author and a book at the same time, we do not want to now start giving them two objects to use in creating that. We can just give them one object, and then that object is our DTO. So we have title. So what now happens is once they give it, what we're going to be doing in the backend is we'll pass the title to the title in the book, price to the price in the book, author name to the author name in the author, age to the age in the author. Now, the process for doing this, there is a manual mapping where you have, let me go into my project now. I'm going to create a class called now. And let me also create another class. Let me use that example here. Let me create another class called author. So this should have ID and name, right? Okay, great. So let me just even copy this same thing for author. So our author should also have an ID and a name. Let's make it simple. So, but we want the user to be able to create these two at the same time. One thing we can do is using a detail. So I could create a create book author detail. And then what I would do is I just need two properties here. And I'm going to call it book name. Then I'm also going to create another one and call it author name. Now, for manual mapping, what I'll do is I would, let me go to our program itself, then I would initialize create this, and then let me close this, create this, I'll call it user data, and just initialize it like that, and I'll call it book name, because gets rich, whatever, and then author name should be, let's say, my name, Gabriel, right? So I want to map this to the other two, right? So manual mapping, what I'll do is book equals new, book dot name equals user data dot book name. Then the same thing for author equals new, author dot name because user data dot whatever. So at this point, I've manually mapped the data from this detail to this two. Then I can now use it wherever I want to use it, or I could decide to just print it. So just say book dot name, and just run this to see that I'm printing the book dot name, but I'm getting the data from user data dot book name. Oh shoot, there's an error somewhere. Error, the type of namespace create book could not be found. Okay, so there's a problem with this stuff. It's asking for this guy. So I just need to bring in the using statements, and hopefully that fixes it. The name book name does not exist in the current context. Okay. That's book name. Let me see what's inside here. Book name. Oh yeah, my mistake, right. Normally, my Visual Studio is supposed to be giving me all of these errors, but for some reason it's not. Let me restart it to see if it would give me the errors. Anyways, so I don't know. Yeah, so I made a mistake of just typing book name instead of user data.book name. All right, moving on. So I'm gonna run this now. All right, so that's just a couple of warnings. And then it's supposed to print out gets rich, right? So what I've successfully done is I got the data from user data, which is create book author detail, and I passed it to this. And this is called manual data mapping, right? But in a huge system, right? Most people do not like to manually map data. They like to automatically map those data, and that's where you have AutoMapper and some of the other libraries come into place. There are other libraries for doing it. There's another one called Dapper, I think. I've forgotten. Let me quickly check. Dapper. So Dapper is an ORM, right? So Dapper is more like something else. I think works more like entity framework. Well, let me see. AutoMapper. Yeah, I think it also works like Dapper also works like AutoMapper. Yeah, so Dapper also works for it. But the most popular one is AutoMapper. And how does AutoMapper work, right? Let me see. It's a bit complex. So probably we'll do a project where we'll use AutoMapper for app. But let me see if I can quickly just create an API for something like that. Give me a second. Okay, so .NET web API dashboard. Okay, so we have our API here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to install AutoMapper into it. So .NET add package AutoMapper. I'm not sure if that's yeah. So not find. Oh shoot! I mean, into it. I'm going to add the AutoMapper package. I'm going inside here to see if it's adding it. So it didn't add it, right? So that's probably not the name. Let me just go to Nougat to confirm what the name is. Nougat.org. Let me get this one instead. Okay. I'm just going to copy and paste that in here. And build my program. So that should install AutoMapper in our program. All right, great. So we have that. I'm going to create an API controller. Come on. Let me just copy and paste this. Copy paste. And rename this to test control. Copy this. And rename this to test controller. And take this bolt away. Take this away. And take this off also. So I'm going to just return OK. So let's just return OK first, and change this to high action results. Okay, so change the name. All right, so we have a basic controller and an action here. What I'm going to do now is I would create a class. I'm going to create a model folder. Models folder, create a class called to do. Let me just, that's the most popular thing. Let me just call it to do. Right, so prop int id, prop string, prop string description, prop dates time, dates converted, That's the beginning of product name. String, no, not string. Date time. Dates created. All right, so we have all of this, right? Right, but then our user wants to create a to-do. If our user is trying to create a to-do, the only thing we need from them is name and description, right? Date created, we can figure out the date or the date and time that it was created by just using this datetime.now method or datetime.utc_now method, right? We could use that to figure out the date that it was created. Then once the moment that it's being created, we also do not need an updated date and time. Why? Because we've not updated it. So that means the only thing we need to show to the user that we need is name and description. So for that to happen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder called DT post. And then inside here, I'm going to create a class called create to do DTO. Then what I need inside of this is prop string name and prop string description, right? Basically, that's what I need. Now, how do I map this to our to-do using AutoMapper? It's a bit complex, but I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. So I will go into our controller. First things first, this is what we need from the user, right? I'm going to say from body pass to do item, I'm going to call it model, right? Instead of here, I'm going to check if model is null. And if model is null, I could just return but first, then I could say, yeah, someone's raising their hand. Model cannot. Go ahead. If you're raising your hand, go ahead. Emeka, that's you. Except if that's a mistake.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to ask a question. I've seen this from body.
Yeah.
That you added to this method. How does it work?
How does it work?
Like, okay. How does it work?
Yeah, so it's just a design or an attribute that specifies that what I'm asking for, it should be sent from the body of the API, right? So when basically it just tells the front-end person how to send this model. You get, right? So when you're consuming an API, there are different ways to send data. So you as a backend engineer, you might want to think about how you want the data to be sent to you. You want it to be sent from the body, you want it to be sent from the URL, you want it to be sent from query parameters. You get, so let me show you what I mean now. We're not deviating, right? But I'm just going to quickly point it out. So let me see. Let me use this. Okay, let me use this now. This add food. There are different options to send something to this API now. I could decide to send it from the body as a JSON, right? There's also form data by sending from a form that's probably a form, a user form or HTML form, right? So I'm just thinking from the front end point of view now. So there's that option. Then you can also send it as parameters where you have key value pairs. So probably you could say ID equals 1. So you now pass it as parameters. Yeah, you can now say name equals no, sorry, and name equals but this is something that a front-end person would worry about, not really you. Your own is just telling them how you want it to be sent to you. Then you could also send it as what's the other option? Let me just show you. There are a lot of options, right? So there's from body, yeah, from routes, there's from routes. So let me just say route ID. So this one expects that you send it from the route without the parameters or all of that. You just say /2. So what this is saying that this 2 would be collected by this route from route ID, right? But if I say from query, what I'm saying is you have to now tell this stuff that, okay, query ID of 2. So this ID will now be gotten from the query. I have to put the stuff. But if I say from body, you have to go into the body and then pass it however I want it passed from this. If you pass it the wrong way, I'm not going to receive it. Do you understand?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, great. All right, so moving on. So we have this model, but we want to use it in a different way, right? So normally, if I wanted to use the manual mapping, before we continue, let me just try using the manual mapping. I'll just do equals new. But I hope we know that this new is the same as new to do, right? So from .NET 6, you don't need to type all of this anymore. I think it's 6 or 5. You don't need to do all of this again. To do equals new to do. You can just ignore the other part and just do new, right? The same as when you're doing list of whatever, list of string, and say to do's equals new list of string. Previously, you can do it like this, right? But now you don't need to do all of that. You can just say new, and then it works perfect. So that's what I've been doing, right? So if I want to map this, I'll just say to do.name equals model.name, right? So this is manual mapping. But with AutoMapper, I need to first of all create a profile, right? So I'm going to close all of this and close all of this and then bring up EGabriel again, mapping. Then right here, I create a profile. I'll go here and create a profile, or call it profiles, because you can have a very big system where you have more than one profiles. But then I'm creating just one profile. Say to do profile. Now, inside of this profile class, I have to inherit from profile. And oh shit. I'm sorry, I did that, right? So normally, if my system was flagging errors, I would not have a lot of difficulty. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the program itself instead of the whole stuff. Let me go to my desktop. Bootcamp, EGabriel, going to EGabriel, going to first class, going to mapping, and I'll just start mapping itself so that it can shut. What did I just say? No. I'm sorry for swearing. My bad.
It's fine.
All right, moving on. So, all right, hopefully it should get me everything I need to debug properly. So I'm going to start on the shop now and see if it's going to start it up. Come on. Supposed to flag this as an error, and then I'm supposed to bring in using AutoMapper, but okay, Yeah, this is what I need. Great. So now I can see all the errors that I have. Crazy. Yeah, imagine I didn't see all of this previously. So now I can do this and then bring in user statement for this. Then I'm also going to come to this part and bring in the user statement for this using AutoMapper. What else is flagging here? Okay, return. Okay, remember does not. Okay, I need to bring in MVC, I think. No, I think it's small letter. Okay, all right, better. All right, moving on. So now the next thing I need to do is I need to create a constructor. And inside that constructor, I need to now tell my app how to do the mapping, right? If I can remember, it's, oh shit. Source to target, source to target, source to target, source to target, right? So in this situation, this is the source. The source is the one from the user. The target is the one I'm trying to map it into. Sometimes, so what I'm trying to say, sometimes our source does not have to be the DTO. Our target could be the domain model, and then the source could be this. So a scenario for that is if you're trying to get data from the database, but you don't want to give this to do to the user. You don't want to return it. You want to return probably a DTO called, let me create that. Read to do DTO, right? So what this contains is, let me go to do. What it contains is ID, name, description. It's created, okay. So let me just do this now. It contains everything except description, right? So I want to give everything to the user except the description, right? If I return this, the description is going to be given to the user. So I need a DTO that will collect it from the to-do and then return it to the user. So that would make this the target and then to-do the source. So I just needed you to understand that so that you can see how that works, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create map. Our source for, I have 10 minutes to go. Our source for this is source is creates to do DTO. Then target is to do. So I just created that mapping so that it knows that, okay, whenever I'm doing this mapping, it can do it. But that's not the end of it. I'm going to show you the rest. Then you could also, there are some extensions method that comes with AutoMapper, right? That you might want to check. But then most of the time I don't use this extension method, but some people use them, and kind of like that part where I said something like for this created, use datetime.now. So I could say that for let me see, for member, how do you do this now? For member X that goes to call it predicates, X that goes to is created, then always map it to datetime.now. So let's see. Probably not how they use it. Guess the data that's set to current data, blah, blah, blah. An address's value is the current local data. You cannot convert system data to so okay, I'm probably doing this wrong, right? But then there is a way to now add some extensions so that once you are mapping it, it automatically just maps what you need for such a situation. Or let's say that let me see if okay, I think there's something else I would need. Let me just check on AutoMapper for member. Also use AutoMapper for member. right? So for member this, up this, okay, right? So I need to actually do some form of extension, right? But what this is doing is, let's say that, let me even get this. Let me use this to explain something else. So let's say that on our to-do, on this place, I have to-do name, but on our to-do, I have just name, right? AutoMapper is not smart enough to know that to-do name is going to come to name, right? But if it's just name, AutoMapper would know that, okay, this name is going to go to this name, right? But if I have it like this, to-do name, then I can, let me come back to our profile, and I can use that for member class and say, for member name, then map from source dot to do comment. Wait, to do. Okay, why did I put that? Okay, I put it in read. No wonder. It's supposed to be create. So map from source dot to do name. That's what it's supposed to be. Right. So once we automatically maps, what's going to now happen is that it's going to get to do name and map it to name. So then I don't need to now do any other configuration anywhere else. Then the other scenario is, remember when I said source to target? The other scenario is when the to-do is no longer the target, but it's the source, right? So I'm going to now reverse this to read to-do detail. I'm going to remove all of these extensions, right? So it's going to, once you get the to-do, it's going to map it to read to-do detail. And what happens in this situation? Because there's no description, where's our to-do? Because there's no description here in this read, it's going to discard the description, but it's going to map every other thing and then send it to wherever we want to send it. So that's the first step to using AutoMapper. You create a profile, which is what we've just done. There's a profile. So we just created a profile here. Now, another thing we need to know is, what if in our solution, in our project, this can be the source and then this can be the target. In such a situation, we do not need to do a create map and then turn it around. We can just do dots reverse map. And what this does is, it just knows that, okay, any of them can be the source, any of them can be the target. So I don't need to create another source and target create map. So this extension is also there. And then there are a lot of other extensions, because AutoMapper is very, very, very dynamic and very useful when mapping objects. So that's one stuff that we've done. The next thing we need to do is register it in our program.cs. So builder.services.add, I think it's AutoMapper. Yeah. Then you need to get the current assemblies. How do I get the current assemblies now? Let's see. Builder.configuration. What's this configuration? Builder.configuration.get assemblies. Get current. Current. Okay, let me just get this from the previous code. There's a way to get the current assemblies. Start on. Let's AutoMapper. Okay. Yeah, I'm using app domain instead, not configuration. So that's what I'm going to use. Yeah. All right, great. So just gets the current assembly. And if you know what assembly is like our namespace, right? So it gets the current namespace and then it registers AutoMapper in that namespace so that you can use AutoMapper anywhere in this namespace. That is just how it works. So that's the second step. Now, the third step is now using it in our project, right? So what I'm going to do here is I have to register AutoMapper in constructor. Let me do that. AutoMapper. Give me a second to check something. Oh, not AutoMapper, iMapper. Yeah, so I have to register iMapper in Constructor. Then, so this is called dependency injection. Oh, we have less than 1 minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here, restart it. Then all you need to do is just join again, and we'll continue from there.